I'm not into podcasts.
I swear you'll never see anything like this ever again. What a hit!
Back of the net.
Hello, welcome to the Not a Pundit podcast. I am Not a Pundit Killian Ginnity, and I'm delighted to be joined as always by Not a Pundit Conor Glennon.
How we doing, boys?
And man in hiding after the weekend results, Robbie Redmond.
Hey Killian, how are you?
I'm probably better than you were at this weekend. Sunderland had a good result, so I'm always happy. We've had some fantastic revelations at Wearside. But Connor, I think the Northeast has a team on top. I'd rather not admit, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we've finally established ourselves as the number one in the North after a hard fought run. We're straight off.
It only call selling your soul.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, we are fairly woeful for that. The off the back of the Champions League, we just straight off watching it there. It was mildly emotional actually hearing the Champions League music coming on, the hairs of the back of the neck going up. It's I think not to dwell on the fixture too much. I know we've Manchester United to absolutely dismantle, but I think 0-0 at San Siro, you'll take that any day. I think as a whole, the players looked nervous from the get-go. I think you saw them in the tunnel kind of looking around, looking left and right, going holy shit, that's Giroud and that kind of thing. And Jacob Murphy, when the Champions League music came on, just burst out into a big smile. I think he was going to cry, and you see what it means to them. And it's one of those things that it's absolutely lovely to see when it's not your team. you kind of want your guys to be stood up there going, okay, right, we're solid here, we can take on any man. I think the major takeout for me was just Trippier. He was absolute player of the match for Newcastle. He ran the show for us, and I think it just shows having European experience. And before we move on, I think T's and P's are with Eddie Mackay, the Newcastle fan who got assaulted over there last night. Apparently, from what everyone's saying, he's in a stable condition. What that means, who knows? But it's a part of the game that we're seeing a lot with European fixtures, and we hope not to see again. I think we're all in agreement on that one as a football community.
Yeah, absolutely. With obviously getting into Europe now, Connor, do you think that Howe is the man to lead you forward, or do you think he is going to very, very soon reach a ceiling that you may need a bigger name?
I think it's too early to say. I think we played well today. I think I liked the passion he was showing today in terms of on the sideline. Him and his best friend Jason Tindall were really running the show, and Tindall was walking all over that pitch. He didn't mind where that technical box ended, but look, yeah, I think it's going to be one of those that I think the job he's done, he deserves the right to have a few mistakes. Obviously, it's the highest level of football, and there's not a lot of area to make mistakes. But I think no one's under no illusion that we're not getting out of this group, so I don't think he should be judged on that. I think let's just focus on if we get into the Champions League next year, how we perform next year. We'll go from there.
And speaking of mistakes, Robbie, United, how did you get on the weekend?
We got on exactly how I predicted, Killian, which was Brighton basically making a show of Man United. So yeah, they fully deserved to win it. Brighton were absolutely brilliant, and it really kind of exposed every level of Man United that they've got wrong over the last couple of years, or last 10 or even longer years. So there's so much to even get into here, like that. Say Man United lose 3-1, they're comfortably beaten by a team who I think will be probably top 4 this season. Brighton are absolutely brilliant.
Do you think they'll push into the top 4?
Then Gary Net. On this form, they can beat anyone. Who we're going to talk about United before we get into Brighton, but what team could you feel that would actually comfortably beat them? Or I know West Ham beat them playing kind of Brexit ball, but I just think they're capable of beating any side, and it's just incredible. I think De Zerbi is probably at the moment the best coach in the world. I can't see anyone as innovative or doing as well as this guy at the moment. So that's another issue. You have to kind of go with Brighton deserve it. But I remember then looking after, Gary Neville's like, the Glazers are responsible. This is how it works. 10 years of mediocrity. I'm like, mate, everyone knows the Glazers have been absolutely terrible. They've ruined the club. They what they done should never have been allowed to stand. They've let the club go into nearly disrepair, but we just need to kind of bring this back and talk about the football here just for a second. So, like, Brighton completed like 614 passes against United, which is the most for an opposition team since Liverpool beat United 5-0 in October 21 when the wheels were coming off for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So you just really saw, I think every level of United was exposed. Like recruitment, Brighton's squad cost 17 million. Man United's squad cost £347 million.
Bonkers.
That's frightening.
That's insane. Like, that is absolutely insane. Like, there's Danny Welbeck. I'm like, Danny Welbeck? Van Gaal let him go. Like he was a good player. Like, Ferguson loved him. He was very tactically flexible. Like, I remember Ferguson's last season, Rooney was getting dropped for big games ahead of Welbeck. Welbeck and Van Persie might often start because Ferguson absolutely loved the guy. And I'm not saying they were necessarily wrong to let him go, but it just shows that if you're a clever club, you can get so much more out of these players. Or Adam Lallana, like a great piece of skill, but it was staggering. And the one thing that really should probably worry Man United fans watching it is Ten Hag was exposed, I think. So, like, I think De Zerbi, as I said, he's capable of beating any coach. He's outwitting all these guys. First 20 minutes, Man United played like a diamond formation and Brighton looked a bit flustered. Brighton figured it out.
Yeah, they abused it. They absolutely abused those wings. They saw that diamond. They were God. The middle's boxed off, it's closed. Let's just hit the channels and absolutely rinse them.
Yeah, and they do this thing where they like Brighton like suck teams onto them and they want you to press them because they pass it around you. But Man United's pressing was just disgraceful. I can go showing you guys a little clip of like a 5-minute period where it looked like lads playing five-a-side, like just not even bothered. Like
it looked like the Craggy Island. It looked like Craggy Island's over 80s league. Like
Craggy
the little
Island
steps of kind of like half jog walking.
Oh my God.
Like Rashford should be ashamed of himself. Like
Rashford, I actually wrote a piece on him a couple of years ago how bad he is pressing. Like I think his pressing statistics were on even at this point in the season with Pogba and Ronaldo. Like not exactly renowned for their industrious performances. Like this is the level. This guy's in the prime of his career. Like, and he can't bother chasing anyone down. And then you have the opposite of that. You have Bruno Fernandes, headless chicken, sprinting around non-stop and running out of position. He doesn't even have a position. He has the Bruno position. So it just looked like Ten Hag had really was exposed, and like what Man United need and what Alex Ferguson proved and what the intervening years have proved is that Man United is a mess as a club, as an institution. Their recruitment is terrible. You can't even do Google searches on their players that they're signing. They really need a genius level manager to cover over the cracks as long as the Glazers or another kind of absentee owners are in charge. Alex Ferguson was that manager. Mourinho wasn't. I don't think Ten Hag is, because I really think De Zerbi made him look like a level below the level he's on, which is, in fairness, it's a high
bar,
level,
but it's still it's unachievable for Ten Hag. And I saw a quote after the game, and honest to God, it made me go, and not to flog the Stephen Kenny horse anymore, but when you hear this quote, tell me it doesn't sound like it's coming from Stephen Kenny. The first 20 minutes were very good. I think we had chances in the first half. I think we played very well, but we didn't score. We didn't finish. That's Stephen Kenny. That is.
That's the accentuate the positives. That's Stephen Kenny, definitely. All he's missing is talking about the fans, many fans that were there. So yeah, it was pretty grim, but also expecting like I sat down to watch that, and it was a really enjoyable match. I say that as a Man United fan. Maybe I'm a bad supporter, but I really enjoyed watching it because Brighton was so good. But I was not surprised at all. Like Casemiro looks off it. Like Højlund looks decent, I have to say. He does look like a half decent player. He has potential there. And then the other thing that kind of shook me about before is like Man United are so bad. They're so bad that their squad is improved now. In a way, not their squad. They scored that goal with the lad Hannibal. That come on, young lad on the periphery of the squad. Great goal. He even celebrated it, so it meant a lot, even though you're losing. Like, you're meant to get the ball and start again, but we'll cut him a slack because he's only a kid. He celebrates, and you're like, he wouldn't be on the pitch if Anthony and Sancho were there. And that's how bad Man United are at the moment, that like by subtracting people, by subtracting these underperforming, for want of a better term, footballers, their team is improved. Like, this is how they, honest to God, they are just a mess. Like, and I cannot see anything beyond top 8. I think it could be another one of those Louis van Gaal last season or Mourinho last season, or I'm not saying Ten Hag could be sacked, but just it doesn't look like it's going to work out. Liverpool are doing really well. Newcastle will improve. Brighton just look unstoppable. Like, they look absolutely unbelievable. Man City and Arsenal will be thereabouts, but Man United,
they're going to be drifting. They're going to be drifting for a while, and
yeah,
like Kill what.
And I'm looking at the squad.
Okay,
yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say
Connor, no.
the problems though. This is one for both of you. It's like, do you think it's all Ten Hag's fault? Because like, it's a rough one on him. He's got a club that's arguably up for sale but not up for sale. He's got 2 players one was investigated and settled outside of court. One's investigated at the moment. You know, you've got an injury list. You've got the Harry Maguire situation to deal with. It's not an easy gig, but do you think it's just, it doesn't matter? De Zerbi could come in and De Zerbi would find a way to work it, you know?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So I don't buy Neville's argument of it's all Glazers. Yes, they've done things wrong, but the one thing you can't say is that they've always invested. Like, they've invested badly.
They've spent money. They haven't invested.
Money.
Yeah.
Like, they've spent a lot of money.
That money in.
They spent a lot of money on players. They spent a lot of money on managers. They spent a lot of money on people above that, and they've chosen the wrong ones every time. It's like it is fantastically terrible, like how they've done it. I thought Ranić coming in was going to be the change. I actually, to be honest, at the time I thought it was like new ownership is coming in and telling them, listen, it's going to take 6 months to get this deal done. This is our guy. We're going to put in our new system.
I think Rob's eyes just exploded when you said Ralph Rangnick.
Yeah, Ranić summed up I don't think any individual in the last couple of years have summed up the mess that Man United are in. They hired a director of football to be a coach and then dismissed him before they could make him director of football.
He came in and said, I want, like, his strikers wise, he said he wanted one of
Julian
Alvarez, Luis Diaz and Vlahovic, and like all of them were shot down, you know.
Instead, they signed Højlund, who is also represented by Ten Hag's agent, because Man United have no recruitment network, seemingly, or it's been ignored, because they've never hired a director of football. Because when they hired a director of football, they asked him to coach the team. It's unbelievable. Like, it's actually staggering. Oh my God, the mess. Like,
but this
and
is
the
the
Glazers
thing.
are
Like,
the culture. It comes from them. Sorry, kidding. Like, they haven't put money in. They've let it go to disrepair. The stadium's in bits. Like, it's leaking. Invested by.
I was about to say there's rats knocking around
it's
there.
In bits. Yeah,
and we're not talking about Anthony here.
Like, they've let the club go to rack and ruin, but the squad has been invested in. But they keep doing is putting the wrong people in charge, and I think Ten Hag is yet another wrong person in charge, and his lack of control over that dressing room. People are saying, "Oh no, it's him being the strong man, telling these players where to go." They had 4 players at each other's throats after losing to Brighton.
I think that's the only positive of that game. And I know this sounds mental.
I agree,
I think
No. If you have that kind of heart, show that to the fans. Not behind closed doors where you can get a little story out by leaking it to your agent.
Well, we know that on the
Bruno.
pitch.
We know it was Bruno. He took
melted.
McTominay on. It's the wrong guy to pick in that dressing room. Then Martinez gets involved and you're like, Jesus, this is getting spicy. But like, jokes aside, I genuinely think that shows they do care, you know.
I personally never saw the Ten Hag thing. Not that, like, I remember writing a piece at the time saying, yeah, like, if you're going to sign Erik Ten Hag, he has proven to be a very good coach, capable coach, but you can't just take him. Like, Ajax he doesn't sign the players for Ajax. Like, Edwin van der Sar and Mark Overmars were doing that. He coached the team. So he needs people behind him to do that. He needs a director of football and a CEO who's football minded, or at least knows the business. He's not a marketing person like a lot of people United have had, but instead you just grabbed him and brought Ten Hag over. Nothing else. There's no director of football. You have a football director, John Murtagh, but like, what has he done? It's Ten Hag signed the players, so it's utterly pointless. Whereas someone like Pochettino, who doesn't really work with directors of football and has been in the Premier League, and that's the other thing with Ten Hag, he's coming from a lower league like the Dutch league, where someone like Anthony can look like a superstar. But when he comes to the Premier League, it's the physical step up, the intensity. It just doesn't translate. So the jury's massively out on him, even though I do agree with his Sancho stance. I think both of them have been left out by the club, hung out by the club to dry, because the club should have known this was an issue for a while. Like, there's been talk of Sancho's attitude for a good while now, that he turns up late, he throws strops here and there. Like, Man United, and he's an asset to Man United. Like, he's one of the few players you go, oh, we could sell him and we won't get all our money back, but we'll get some of it back. And he's never delivered. He's never been good enough. I don't think he's good enough. So sell him in the summer, but they wait till the window closes, and then they can't. Man United as a club can't even broker a truce between these two parties to go, listen, you don't like each other, but just go back to training Sancho, Ten Hag, let him back, and we'll find
him a way out. Both parties happy. Get rid of him. Yeah.
Is there a way back?
No.
No, he's not good enough. That's the thing. If he was in the squad now and showing up on time, let's say he was bringing Ten Hag an apple every day and saying yes sir, no sir, and like, it wouldn't make a difference. He's not good enough, like, and he hasn't been good enough, and he's not on that level. It's irrelevant, but he's an asset. And Man United, like, they don't know how to sell players either. I think Dan James is the only player they've bought and then sold for profit since Ferguson left.
That's insane.
That's insane. Like, that is there. Well, sum up. They don't function like a football club. Like, if you, like, say, you just stop thinking of them as Man United Football Club, the Busby Babes, they won all these things. Just think of them as like this property that's been left to go into disrepair by an absentee landlord, and you're like, oh, all right, this makes sense. Like, they don't care. They're sitting in Florida, the Glazers. They'll take their dividends, and like, yeah, we might have a season or two out of the Champions League, but the effort for the Glazers to actually try put shape on the club, like the way FSG, and I know they're not popular, Liverpool have done, it's just, they won't do it. And that's why I don't like Neville jumping instantly to the Glazers. It's too much. We need to focus on the football. But ultimately,
I do think, to some respect, from Neville's point of view, and Kill, I'd be interested to get your opinion on this one, is it does drip down from the top. Like, those issues of sales and all of these decisions, like, yeah, like the director of footballs have been chosen, that's a Glazer decision. The personnel, at the end of the day, if the Glazers wanted it to be their decision, they could make it their decision, or at least at board level. So I think there is some merit to it, but I don't know if you're on the same thinking, Kill.
I think that they don't care about player sales. The only thing that they're worried about is the net value of the club, which they have got to an all-time high by... It was the reason why... what was his face that was there for years? The former... Ed Woodward. It's the reason why he was there for so long, is because he found a way of monetizing everything. Because why does Man United have a tractor partner? Why do they have an official
FFP?
Why
has
do
to
they...
be.
Yeah.
No, like, it's marketing. It's what gives the club its ridiculous value, and fair play for breaking new ground in the sport to do it. But like, I think the whole situation, not to just always bring it back to my club, but like, it really reminds me of Sunderland when we went down, because we had an absentee American owner. We had a core of players that was after outlasting multiple managers that stop caring because they know they're going to outlast this one as well. And they have all these players around them that just aren't good enough, but have been paid over the odds. Now, the only thing with United is they're not going to get relegated, and they're not going to get that kind of leg break moment where you have to fix it. But, Rob, is there a way of fixing this? Well, I think is probably a rotten core with the squad.
I really don't know, because I think you look at the Glazers have been, or the Glazers, or the people they've appointed, have been effective in Man United were always kind of monetized. They were the industry leaders. I remember there's a documentary on like Barcelona in 2003, and they were like, Manchester United are like the shining star. We have to copy them. They monetize everything. Look what they've done. So United were doing that before the Glazers came along, but they've definitely ramped it up. The issue isn't that, it's how they then spend it. They don't know really how to spend it or how to use it. So that's why it leaks into the club and the players and the manager. So they'll go and sign Jadon Sancho and report £350,000 a week. Now, what has he done to warrant that? Not a lot. And then he's sticking around. And then it ultimately becomes easier to change the manager and hope that that's what will turn things around and actually change the whole culture. The culture just seems rotten, really, and that's why I don't know. I don't think Ten Hag is. Let's say he's a Europa League manager, and we're talking about Champions League here. I don't know if he's the answer, but I do like that he is at least attempting to put some shape on it. But it could be a losing battle.
What he's doing with Sancho, though,
I
I understand he's saying I was brought in to create a culture of no excuses and all of that, but like player power is a real thing in today's market, and you know what Ferguson could do back in the day, where you said one word wrong or you bought a motorbike when it was excluded in your contract, you're gone. You know, like, and no, all the team were like, yeah, you broke the contract. Now it's like players, like you said, they're like, look, mate, most of us will be here when you're gone, so you know, jog on.
That's it, and that's where that's why recruitment is so important. And we go back here to Brighton again. Like, I was reading an interview with not the Brighton CEO, the guy, the gambler guy, I'm trying to remember his name. Another guy is his chairman, and he was saying that Liam Brady is his neighbour in Brighton, because Liam Brady managed Brighton in the early 90s. And this guy spoke to him about Evan Ferguson and asked him about Evan Ferguson because Liam Brady played football for St. Kevin's boys in Dublin with Evan Ferguson's granddad. But like, think of that there's more research done on Evan
already
Ferguson. A 16-year-old Irish lad who they're 10 a penny at that stage, who's coming over. It's not going to cost them much. They done more research than that. Like, Man United signed Marcus Rojo in 2014 and didn't realise he had an assault charge against him.
And this is a common thing at this point. That's
what we're dealing with.
It's like, I don't even know if they're even doing, not character references, but like in football, it's always
a Google search.
Someone, even a Google search. Like, the way it works in football is it's usually, has someone in the club played from already? Go talk to him. If they haven't, find someone who has. Find his youth coach. Find the teams he left in a short period of time and find out who he is. But this is one thing that I've been thinking during the week, and it may make me sound absolutely like a lunatic. Did Ferguson's tenure, albeit the most successful period the club has ever had, did it screw them long term? Because every other club is used to having 6 years of a manager, find a new one, 5 years of a manager, find a new one, not however long Ferguson was there. Like, I think it put them into a place where they were arguably the biggest club in the world, probably still are in that top 3 discussion, at least in IP, but like, I think it put them into a comfort zone that they cannot get out of.
I think it's more that they failed to prepare. Like, Arsenal was in the same boat. Longevity. I think it was Ferguson's ego that held them back at the end, because he never really liked to say when he was actually going to retire. It was always that, I might retire this year, and I might retire this year, and then eventually it happened. It was like, oh fuck, okay, he's actually going to do it this time. Whereas if you look at like Wenger, he said he's going to go, he went. They had a transition period.
Of course, he got pushed.
But still, like, they had a transition period of 2.5 years, and they're back on track. Like, Robbie, in your wet dreams, you couldn't hope for that anymore.
No, well, I think you have a great point there, Connor. And a lot of United fans, older generation, like, I think maybe even Roy Keane's probably more popular, because people forget, not everyone forgets, but the reason why the Glazers were able to take Man United over, not to go back to them and sound like Gary Neville, is because Ferguson got into an argument over a racehorse. Like, that's why we're here. That's why this. Yeah, with JP McManus and Magnier, Ferguson got into a massive row with them over racehorse. There was pressure put on Ferguson. The Irish owners, or majority shareholders, started to want out. Malcolm Glazer was there, came in, and that's what bothers me. Man United fans get criticised, saying they're only getting the green and gold flags out when scarves out when they lose. They've been protesting from day one of this. Like, this has been long haul. So Ferguson, in that sense, and he was a smokescreen for the Glazers, because from 2005 to 2013, 8 years, they won 5 league titles, Champions League, 3 Champions League finals. Ferguson papered over the cracks, but he also held them back in a sense of held them back.
This is what I'm saying. It's such a weird argument to have,
we are, basically nearly like a medieval operation. Like all these other clubs, like Arsenal, have a director of football. Brighton have a director of football. The manager is no longer a manager. He's a head coach. You move him in, you move him out. Like you, obviously, you're looking for a better head coach, like Graham Potter. Like so, you have Chris Hughton at Brighton, Graham Potter to Roberto De Zerbi. It's like, remember years ago, like Pokemon, like the different levels of evolution. Like, I don't know who's after De Zerbi. Yeah, but Man United don't have that. You just have let's go get Louis van Gaal. He was a good manager in the 90s. Oh, let's sack Van Gaal. We missed out on the Champions League by goal difference. Let's get Mourinho in. He's a famous manager. Mourinho and Van Gaal's football couldn't be any more different. They're like, and then get rid of him. We bring in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. God love him. Like
he got
and then
he
we
got
get rid of
sold
him. We bring in Ralph Rangnick.
He got sold a proper rod.
Yeah, like, and all these guys are collateral damage for ultimately these people who just don't know what they're doing, don't care about what they're doing, and it's just a cash cow. It's a dividend. Man United will give each Glazer family member 25 million a year. They'll take it out. They put nothing of their own money in, and the way the Premier League is, the way European football is, the money Man United spends will keep them at a certain level, but success is. It won't happen. And you compare that to Brighton, who are doing more due diligence on a child, an Irish footballer, than Man United did. And any of the players, or Liverpool, who are using, like, I think Liverpool were hiring guys who used to work for NASA to create algorithms to help them identify talent. Like, that's where we're at now. And Man United are still like, who are we going to get in here? So,
Robbie, just to double down on your point about the Brighton comparison, apparently United had decided they were going to sign Moises Caicedo, and they didn't because they couldn't find a contact for his representative. Whereas Brighton went out, did the hard yards.
If we wanted to book him for this show, we could find a representative. Like, that is
That's
joke.
what I'm saying.
Say no more. Like,
and that's why. If he's not in Ten Hag's agent's phone book, then he's not getting.
That's it.
So with that in mind, then,
and that's your
with that in mind, right? So last year, after 5 games, you were 5th. This year, 13th. Burnley next weekend, which is arguably the nicest game you could have got coming into it. That said, Vinny Kompany is manager. If you lose that, the optics are really poor. But how are you feeling going into that game?
I feel like they should win. Like, it's like just the talent gap. Like, you know, you have talented players and they should be able to beat them. But ultimately, it's just, it might change the narrative for a few days. I'm more thinking of Bayern away and Harry Kane, who should be playing for Man United, really should is wrong. He probably should be playing for Tottenham. But if you don't spend 80 million on Anthony, 70 odd million on Sancho, there's Harry Kane. Like,
sure, Højlund was how much?
Like, Harry, 75 million for Højlund, who scored 9 goals last season. Now, how do you explain that to someone? Like, imagine you just drop down, you haven't been following football for age. How do you explain these things happen? It makes no sense. Like, Man United, we all knew Kane was probably going to leave Tottenham this year, or at least it was the best chance to get him out. But no, nothing towards him. So Man United now are effectively a content machine, really. That's what it is. They give us content, something to talk about, funny to laugh at them. They get you annoyed, or you can laugh at them, wherever it might be. But as a serious football club, like, I don't know. Maybe in 5 years' time, maybe some, I don't know, hopefully not Qatar, but someone might come in and put some shape on it. But I've lost all hope for them, really.
United's transfers,
until we start winning again.
United's transfers remind me of Football Manager, because, like, you know the way in Football Manager is the star rating on players, but like that's a relative one to your squad and your scout's ability to understand. It's kind of like they've scouted Højlund. It's like, oh, he's 5-star in comparison to Hannibal, or like Zidane Isbal, or whatever his name is, instead of kind of going, oh, in the rest of the world he's actually 3-star in comparison to Harry Kane, who is actually 5-star for everybody. It's just one of them like really short-sighted. Like,
one last stat about United. This is one that will really make your head spin. So since the 2011-12 season, no Premier League team has had fewer players leave their club. So, you know, you've had 174 player exits, you'd call it. This is via Transfermarkt. So basically, you just can't sell anyone. So that's why the culture's wrong.
World's biggest adoption agency, Manchester United.
Literally, like, it's like the civil service, like, you just
jobs for the boys,
for life, like. So yeah, pretty much, like, and you're well paid, and yeah, you might have a few bad days, get a bit of abuse, but Like,
We'll give you a bit of cash.
in
You'll
general
get a good lump sum, and if you really want to leave, we'll pay you off to go.
Yeah, so they listen to Bruno give out to you all day.
Before we move off
Lads,
United,
let's just get ourselves registered as players and just get signed for United.
before we move off United, the last thing I want to get your boys' take on is taking Hoyland off, and obviously it was met with boos. Where do we land on that?
What did it matter?
I think it showed a sign of what is in Ten Hag's brain. Like, it really showed a lack of fight for me. I don't know about you, Rob.
I think I'm being real nice to him. Usually I'm really critical of managers. He was playing well. I would have kept him on United chasing the game. Maybe he was being too pedantic about, we can only play 70 minutes or 60 minutes, wherever it is. So it was interesting, though, definitely the crowd reaction, because they've always supported Ten Hag. They will support the manager. That they love that at United. But yeah, it was the crowd reaction was interesting because it's the first time they've really turned on him. It also shows how frustrated they were. They just had to take their anger out on something. And yeah, it's the first time I've really seen them go against one of his decisions.
I think they'll have to do it a few more times going forward.
Yeah. And speaking of changes, obviously Arsenal made the change between Robbie Redmond's favourite goalkeeper in the world and their new signing, Ramsdale for Raya. Connor, what was your reaction before we unleash Robbie on this?
Well, I've a stat and a quote to lead this off with, and then I'll kind of give you my...
Go with the quote first. We'll go.
Mikel Arteta said, "I'm a really young manager and I've only been in the job for 3.5 years, and I have few regrets about what we've done. One of them, that is on 2 occasions I felt after 60 minutes and 85 minutes in 2 games in this period to change the keeper in that moment, and I didn't do it. I didn't have the courage to do it." Now, I appreciate it as a manager saying, here's the transparency of my thought process. But if you are Aaron Ramsdale, you know that's you. He's played you 76 of 77 Premier League games in a row. It can only be you. That has to destroy any thought of, I'm the number one. Ray is just in here to challenge me. That basically is going, didn't trust you. I think it's Raya.
I predicted Raya would be the number one by Christmas. It's September. It happened a lot quicker. I seen Raya in the flesh at Anfield. My friends are Liverpool fans, and I went along, and I was watching them, and I had no connection on my phone or nothing. So I literally just spent the whole undistracted watching them play, and it was a boring match. I'm not gonna lie. Other than Salah being really good, I was struck by how good Raya was with his feet. This for Brentford. He's a brilliant passer of the ball. He, not in the sense of Onana, United brought him in, he's good with his feet, and he hasn't been very good at saving either. David Raya has both aspects. So I did a piece on Ramsdale a couple of months ago because I feel there's very few players who are overpraised. I think he is one, definitely, and I'm kind of glad to see Arteta come out and say that, even though he's kind of laying the gauntlet down to him, really.
Is that what he's doing, right? Because that's what I'm wondering. Because is it a case of, are they going to play one off the other? So, say Ramsdale was poor, they brought Raya in. If Raya plays this weekend and he's poor, Ramsdale's back in. Because if he doesn't, fans are going to be hopping on him if he's kind of going, oh, no, we're going to stick with Raya. But they're like, well, you got rid of Ramsdale. So because if he plays this right, Ramsdale and Raya will be at the top of their form, and to be honest, they don't care who's in the net at that point.
I think it's laying the gauntlet down to Ramsdale. I don't think he was good enough in the last, say, 10 matches of the season. Remember the match that really cost Arsenal the 3-3 draw? Ramsdale passed the ball directly to Southampton. Southampton were relegated and Arsenal dropped 2 points against them. And there's loads of little games you go through like that. And then I remember digging into the stats for him. So his save percentage last season, Ramsdale was 71.8, so let's say 72, whereas David Raya was 76.2, which was the 4th best in the division behind Bernd Leno, Nick Pope and Kepa Arrizabalaga, surprisingly. So on the stats, you're like, okay, Ramsdale beats him because he's better with his feet. Or not Ramsdale, sorry. I must correct that. David Raya is the better goalkeeper. Stats, yes, 100%. And then from the eye test, like, I do think that as well, Raya is better. And then just his demeanour, I think Ramsdale, he has Pickford vibes to him, I think. I think he's a bit jumpy, a bit, like, I don't know if you've seen a goal a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'm not a goalkeeping expert, but I was watching João Palhinha scored for Fulham. And Ramsdale, it was like the equaliser. Ramsdale put all his weight on his left side. And the only part of the goal that Palhinha could have scored in was the area Ramsdale vacated, because he was just jumping around and trying to be busy. And I feel like he wouldn't inspire a lot of confidence if he was my goalkeeper. And I do think he's made mistakes. And I think Arteta's, I think that's great, being ruthless like that. Why should a goalkeeper have a veto on his position? Like, he thinks this guy is better. He's treating him no different than a centre midfielder or a centre forward. And it looks to me like Raya has the jersey now, and Ramsdale will probably be the Champions League goalkeeper for the foreseeable. And ultimately, you have to say, if he thought Ramsdale was good enough, he's not going to, like, Jurgen Klopp's not going out and spending 40 million as a backup to Alisson, because he knows Alisson's the best. Like, there's no one else that can come close to him. That's why he has Kevin Kelleher. Whereas, and the other thing with Arsenal as well is that Arsenal's goalkeeper coach used to work with Raya for Brentford. So
that makes sense.
I think that, yeah. So I think the wind is only going one way here. Even though Ramsdale is a bit of a media darling, so just be careful. You see some of these quotes. Like, I think his agent is working overtime to kind of change the narrative. I've already seen him being linked to Bayern Munich and Chelsea.
I was going to say the Mail are reporting that Chelsea are quote unquote alert to the situation, but I think every club in the world is alert to the situation.
Yeah,
I think this is probably the biggest decision Arteta has made since Aubameyang. Like, this is possibly the most divisive, because you have one of probably the league's best goalkeepers versus one of the world's most valuable goalkeepers. Not saying best, Rob, don't worry, calm down. But like, the thing about Ramsdale is he seems like a proper Jack the Lad, and he could be very popular in that dressing room. And I think that's where Arteta has to be careful. And even for himself in the media, because like, we've seen Ramsdale come out and be very blunt and honest in podcasts. Wasn't he on the Fozcast? And he was basically saying like, yeah, Sheffield, or it was either Sheffield or Bournemouth, didn't want me to go, so I just told them I'm leaving, and you can either I won't work, or you let me go. So like, Connor, will this blow up? And if it does, can Arteta weather yet another big storm?
It's one of those, I'm not sitting on the fence when I say time will tell, but I think you make a good point with Aubameyang that he handled that situation about as well as he could have done when it came down to it in the end. And he is a clone of Pep in many, many ways, and Pep is good in conflict. So I think if it is to blow up, it won't blow up in favour of Ramsdale. Arteta will come out shinier on that one. I really hope for Ramsdale that he can pull this off. I like him as a player. I like him as a guy. I think I kind of like the bit of shithouse in him. He's a character, and as all goalkeepers are. But I think long term, my heart says Ramsdale. But from the stats that Rob's kind of said it on air and off air, and the efficiency that he brings to it, I think it ain't going to be Ramsdale in that net in 2 years' time.
I feel like in The Simpsons, remember Frank Grimes, where he's giving it about Homer. He's like, he's an idiot. And everyone's like, yeah, but that's how I feel about Ramsdale, because it's not that I dislike the guy. I think he's good, like, he's grand, but if you look at the stats, which what else can we look at here? Our statistics. You know? And he's middle of the road, like, he's nothing special. Like, so XG goals prevented last season, I don't want to sound like a complete nerd, but it's like 0.4. Like, in other words, he hasn't added much. You know, he saved the shots you'd expect him to save. He's had a couple of errors. His save percentage is middle of the road, like on level with, like, just below Vicente Guaita for Crystal Palace, just a bit, actually the exact same as Lucas Fabianski for West Ham. Like, nothing special. And Arteta, for all his he's nakedly ambitious. Like, this guy he wants Arsenal to win. He didn't spend all that money on Declan Rice for nothing. He wants the best in every position, and he's looking at, and I think he's come to the conclusion that David Raya is better, and I think I like that way of operating. It's rather than it's ruthless in a sense, but I think it will stand to him, and I do think ultimately it's a cruel game, but I think Raya is a better.
I think as well it goes back to what we were saying about United. Like, I don't know if you guys watch the All or Nothing with Arsenal, but like the Edus of the Arsenal team are the real string pullers. And yes, they give Arteta a lot of freedom, but there is a strong unit there that are very capable and serious operators. And I think that's what's really elevated Arsenal. Like, don't get me wrong, without Arteta, you bring in a not great manager, you can have the best directors of football and you want. It needs to be cohesive. But I think it just proves that point of you need very dedicated roles that people don't deviate from and do effectively to be competitive in any league, but especially the Premier League. And like, speaking of being effective, Arsenal have Tottenham at the weekend. What are we saying, boys?
I can't really look beyond Ange right now. Like, they're playing fantastic football. Like, it's going to be a great game to watch because two teams that can play good ball. It's going to be entertaining if nothing else. But I don't know. I think, Robbie, I'll get you to come in after this. But I think the way that Ange has them playing could be the kryptonite to Arteta. Just that kind of like going at you, positivity, fucking let's keep going. We'll break down Arteta's a bit more thought out. I kind of want to say, but I don't want to say, if you know what I mean. Kind of tactics, and like it's one of them kind of ones. It'll either be like a 4-4 thriller, or it's going to be like a Richarlison shithouse get it over the line.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it because I don't get many predictions or any predictions right, but one I did get right was that I thought Tottenham would be the team to watch this season, just because it's going to be so enjoyable and the games will be great. And I didn't see the match on Saturday, but saw the highlights, and you have like Richarlison scoring in the 98th minute, Kulusevski scoring in the 100th minute technically, and it's just class. And Postecoglou, anyone who's watched Celtic teams won't be surprised by his kind of demeanour and his approach, but also the type of football he played. Like those goals as well weren't just like hit and hope goals, they were like well worked goals. So that shows that they really are taking on board his kind of coaching, and he's kind of like, as well, he's like, I like with Postecoglou, he's like the opposite of these kind of Mourinho or even Ten Hag, or Klopp can be a little bit grouchy as well. He's just kind of life affirming. Like, you like listen to him. He seems like a nice, like you'd like to go for a pint with him, and he seems like
he'd probably go with you too. He has kind of
yeah, he kind of has this thing like a nice outlook on life, and he was talking about his dad passing away, and he's talking about mental health, and then he's kind of, it was his way of defending nearly Richarlison because he's had a tough time. And then Richarlison scores, and you're just like Tottenham might not win the Premier League, but if you're paying wherever it is €1,000 a year, €2,000 a year for a season ticket to go watch Tottenham, like
you're getting your money's worth,
as close to your money's worth, like as you can, and that's all really you can kind of hope for. So I think he's a great fit, and he's a super coach as well. And I kind of, not my second team, but I'd like to see Tottenham stick it to Arsenal. I think that would be enjoyable.
I like to see them do well. I can't explain why, but Tottenham have always been a team that have been a cheese grater to me. I don't know why, but I'm a big Ange fan, and I think looking at his post-match comments the other day when he was asked kind of about the possibility of Tottenham winning the league and the fans thinking they can win the league, and he very much didn't come at it as some kind of Klopp way of shooting it down and doing the usual PR line. He was like, how amazing is it that the fans can dream? He's like, they have that right, they pay their money, they come to watch football that we try to do the best they can, let them dream. And like, it sounds kind of wishy-washy, but that's the stuff that flies with fans.
Yeah, he gets it. He definitely gets it. And after the last couple of coaches Spurs have had since Pochettino, he's probably as close to that level. He's on the same kind of emotional level. I enjoy watching him play, definitely. I think he brings something different to it.
But like, it's also kind of refreshing to see, like, with Ange, Tottenham have obviously like put their faith in him, but like they allowed him to prepare for Kane's departure before Kane ever left. So they were either going to be left with Kane plus a good team or a good team, and they've just been left with a good team. And like Connor, it harks back to the Bale days of Bale goes, get any player that is willing to be there, and then just hope that they work. And you got Eriksen out of it, but then you also had Salado and Lamela.
I think, to be honest, and you guys might think different of this, but I think Kane going was the best thing that could have happened to Postecoglou, because it allowed him a little bit of freedom to go, you know, this is my team now. There's no hierarchy here. He could select his own captain, which Son seems to have absolutely ran with, the way he kind of treated Richarlison after his goal and his mental health kind of discussions in the press recently, and pushing him towards the crowd to be like, they're chanting your name, mate. Like I think it's definitely worked out for him. I think you're completely correct in killing the Gareth Bale comparison of it was a major structural change to that team, but I think it definitely, Kane leaving, which sounds insane, Kane leaving was less of a issue seemingly than when Bale left. But I don't know what you're thinking, Kill.
There is one little thing that's come out since we started recording via Fabrizio Romano that could actually put a little bit of spice onto that thought.
Harry Kane's coming back.
Spurs chairman Daniel Levy, we have a buyback clause for Harry Kane. I'd like to thank Harry for everything he's done with us. It goes without saying he's always welcome back, and he's a much loved, valued member of the Spurs family and forever in our history. I did not hear that they had a buyback clause.
That man doesn't let anything
Harry
go.
Kane, Robbie.
That man doesn't let anything go out the door without the chance to get it back. He probably doesn't even let his kids go to school without a buyback clause.
Yeah, I think Bayern were like, all right, if you want, mate. Like, you're not really going to sign him back, like, are you?
And
like,
it also, Kane has to agree to go back, which he, unless his brother is that shit of an agent, he won't.
I could see him go back in 2 years.
I'd say he's sick missing it. I'd say he's sick seeing these scenes. Like, and that's where anyone, like Tottenham with Pochettino as well, and now the Postecoglou, like, Pochettino's team are really close to being champions in 16 and 17, and all you're missing was a little bit more from Levy, and Pochettino never got it, and that's where Postecoglou could hit that ceiling again as well, because from what we see in the evidence so far is that he is getting players to perform above themselves the way Pochettino did. And imagine they had Harry Kane as well. People probably would be talking about them as outsiders. No one's probably going to beat Man City. But
people are talking about them as outsiders with Ivan Perisic, so like they'll talk about them as outsiders regardless.
But that's what a good coach does. That's what De Zerbi does. The players are nearly not irrelevant, but their individual talents are only going to go so far. It's the collective, and that's what Connor's right. I think Kane leaving is actually a blessing for Postecoglou because it took so much expectation away, and also Son is probably more of a high pressing player that would suit Postecoglou's style. Not that Kane's style wouldn't, because Kane's world classy too.
Madison's been a major game changer for that team as well.
100%.
Like, I didn't think that was going to work out as well as it was. I fully thought he was on his Range Rover would be heading up north to join my beloved Newcastle, and God, I would have been delighted if he did. But I really did know that was going to pan out. But he seems to just bull by the horns. Not that he's a new player, he was always good, but like he just seems fully bought in, and he suits that team to the ground.
Well, from one beloved coach to another, Robbie, fantasy football. Who should we be looking at this weekend? Because I am seriously struggling.
I had a bad week myself. Well, I think everyone had a bad week. The average was around 40 points. For this week, the one I brought in last week, which I was happy with, is Julian Alvarez. So, okay. Man City striker. He's played every minute bar one so far this season, and he has 2 goals and 5 assists. Now, I'm always worried by Man City players because they call it like the pep roulette. You just don't know who's going to start other than Haaland or De Bruyne. But even then, these guys could be rested. But Alvarez is playing so well, and De Bruyne is injured that he will, and Grealish is injured too, so he more than likely will play. And Man City have Forest at home, and anyone follows fantasy knows that's a game for Haaland captain, but it's also that could be a 5-0, and Alvarez seems to be centrally involved, so he'd be probably top of my list. He's only 6.8, which is cheap. The next one would be like Malo Gusto for Chelsea. He's a randomer, but he's only 4.2 million.
That could be a cheeky little kind of last-minute decision.
Yeah.
He sounds like a regen in Football Manager.
Yeah, he has regen vibes to him. And like Chelsea have no sponsor on their jersey. It's very Pro Evo vibes to it. But they play, Villa at home, then Fulham away and Burnley away. So like you've 3 nice fixtures there, cheap, and if you have a couple of transfers, and you don't want just Salah really, because Liverpool look good. I was hoping they wouldn't be, but they look good, and they've West Ham at home, so they'll have a lot of the ball. He's on penalties too. So if you want to kind of switch it up and move away from Haaland, I think Salah would be a good one. So between now, which is game week 6 up until game week 17 when he play Man United, they have West Ham, Spurs, Brighton, Everton, Forest, Luton, Brentford, Fulham, Sheffield United, Palace. Like their fixtures are absolutely unbelievable, other than like Man City here or there, Man City, Man United. But so great fixtures. He's in great form. He had 3 assists last week. I would be, if you can afford him, because he's the second most expensive player in the game, I'd be going for Salah.
Should I get rid of Son for Salah?
Oh,
that's a big one, actually.
That is big, because I like sometimes people look at like North London Derby and go, "Oh, I'm going to sell Son there, or I'm going to sell one of my players," but there might be more goals in those games. You know, I don't know if I would actually. I don't know, because Spurs have Arsenal, then Liverpool. I don't want to sit on the fence. But Salah is just in super form, so I don't know. Maybe that's
in terms of selling.
Maybe look to sell. Move on.
In terms of selling, who are the obvious ones to get rid of?
Nicholas Jackson for Chelsea. Like, God almighty, like everyone jumped on him because he was cheap, and poor fella's getting loads of chances, and it's just not going in for him. He's very, he's doing like, it reminds me of like Torres, and like when he just signed for Chelsea, like he's just not scoring, and he's not, and Chelsea aren't playing particularly great. So Jackson, I've moved him on. I sold Ollie Watkins because like Villa are scoring plenty of goals, but he's not getting any of them, and he's 8 million.
That's heavy, yeah.
If someone's not doing well, just move him on. Like, it's grand. There's loads of players in the game, and the other one was Martinelli. He came off with a knock for Arsenal, and he's expensive too. I think he's like 8.5. I just would probably just move him on. And there's so many good midfielders on the game this year that I'd be focusing my money on midfield. Like you've Mbueno, Salah, Bowen, Saka, Maddison, Son, Diaby off Villa, like Ward-Prowse, like there's loads of them. So I wouldn't stick on players for too long if they're not doing great or if their fixtures are poor.
And like you've said before, you can't take your love for the player into account. You need to be ruthless in terms of the stats.
Absolutely. That's why I'm dying to sell Bruno and Rashford, but they've Burnley, and I'm like, I can't sell them before Burnley and Palace. But yeah, you just need to take the emotion out of it completely.
Now, gentlemen, we are coming to the end of the podcast, so one very last quick fire question to you is, what match are you going to watch this weekend and why?
Ooh, I think the North London Derby for me is an obvious one. I'm also very curious. Actually, I'll do it in a 3-tier. This is the longest quickfire question answer the world's ever seen. Number 1, North London Derby. Number 2, Liverpool West Ham. I'd be very interested in to see that. And 3rd would be Chelsea, just to see if they can finally get a win. What are you saying, Robbie?
Yeah, I'm definitely North London Derby, but I'm also going to be, I know I'm going to be pathetic. Ireland are going to play South Africa in the rugby, and I'll have that on my iPad while I'm watching Burnley v Man United at Turf Moor and cursing Bruno Fernandes and the Glazers and everyone. So that would be me. What about yourself, Killian?
I think the one that I'm kind of most excited to see is Chelsea and Aston Villa, because I think Chelsea, for all of their faults, aren't actually playing bad football. And they're going to come up against a good footballing team. So if they can get a result here, this could be the turning point for them. Do I have any faith in them getting the turning point? Absolutely not. There'd be no money put on it. But I just think that it could be potentially, if it goes one way, it could be very pivotal for the rest of the season. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. And obviously, my time is going to be on the rugby on Saturday.
Yeah,
so
I think we're all going to be flying the green flag this weekend, and I feel bad, Kill. We keep talking about the games that we're spotlighting, and we never get to talk about Sunderland, but we will get to it at some point. I do promise.
What division are Sunderland in again?
Wow.
I'm only joking.
No, but for real, what division are they in? No, I'm joking.
You'll all come crawling back to us when we're back on Netflix. Yeah. Keep on laughing now. Gentlemen, we've made it to the end of episode 2. Well done. And I want to thank you for joining me this evening. Thank you very much. Not a pun, Conor Glennon.
Thanks a million, boys. Great chat as always.
Thank you very much, journalist and author and man that gives us credibility, Robbie Redmond.
Thanks, lads.
And thanks to you for listening. Give us a like or a rate or whatever it is on the platform that you're listening to us on. And we'd appreciate it if you could leave us a wee review. And we'll catch you next week.
I'm not into podcasts.
I swear you'll never see anything like this ever again.
What a hit! Back of the net.